Breaker 19, this is the Rubber Duck. Who's leading this here convoy? Over.
I read you, Rubber Duck. This is the Convoy trucker heading this bacon convoy. We're on the road to health through the carnivore diet. Why don't you follow us? Over.
10-4, carnivore trucker. Let's bring home the bacon. Over.
Professor Bart K, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Well, thank you for joining me on Bacon Convoy. That's the name of the show. Yeah, this is for people who are viewing. This is going to be a pre-record. By the time this comes out, I will most likely be at the Texas Renaissance Fair, eating haggis, Scotch eggs, and to be honest, probably drinking a little too much excess alcohol, which I'm sure Bart K will have some choice words for that, but we'll get into that. That's on the list of subjects. But Bart, tell us, for some of the few people on my audience who might not know who you are, give us a little introduction and like your background.
You bet. Yeah, I used to be a senior academic in the field of human health science. For several decades, I taught, researched, and consulted externally with various people, organizations, students, whatever it was at the time, depending on what role I was doing in academia. And out of that, I got a bunch of peer-reviewed publications in my name of experiments that I've been involved in, et cetera, et cetera. Book chapters, the full shindiggery. Ended up with the title of professor for whatever that's worth by the end of it. Decided to chuck all of that in a few years ago now, because I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like the shape that academia was going. I didn't like the way it was being run. I didn't like the politics that had come into it. And I'd been sort of against the current pretty much the whole time anyway. So I decided to hang up my academic regalia and become I guess you'd call it an online influencer, I think is what you would call what I do. And so I'm doing that now instead.
Well, that's great, and you've certainly made a name for yourself in the carnivore community, which you advocate for the carnivore diet. Just because that's going to be the subject today, can you define the carnivore diet for us?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that people operationally define all sorts of things. If you take the strict biological definition of carnivore diet, that would be any animal that consumes more than 70% of its so-called calories in the form of animal products. The flesh of another animal, basically. So 70% is not that strict. In fact, if you're a 70% carnivore, we probably would turn our noses up at you and go, you never really were a carnivore. Yeah, nah. In the most loving way possible and the most supportive way possible, of course, because that's how we conduct ourselves here. Right up to, some people's definition at the other end of the spectrum, where it's 100% carnivore or nothing, out of the club, hand your card in, show up for a public flogging to be pointed at and have some lettuces and things thrown at you and stuff. They'll probably have a bell and go shame, 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 and all that kind of stuff as you take the walk naked.
Yeah, there's certainly a little bit of dogma in the community, but the purists. But there's nothing wrong with
the funny
that.
thing is, I'm accused of being the dogmatic one by the one that likes to pour honey and fruit down his neck. Anyway, that's for another day.
Yeah, that's another subject not on my list. So.
No, carry on.
All right. Let's get the first subject out. Let's not try to spend too much time on it, but let's go ahead and beat this dead horse of, why calories don't really matter. But I'm thinking we'll do something a little different. I'll give you my understanding of why calories are, kind of baloney, as you might say. So you can look under a microscope and see like a protein chain, whatever, a fat chain, whatever, amino acid, but you can't look at a calorie. It's a construct based on thermodynamics, and like, for example, cardboard has calories, metal has calories, and just like certain foods that we eat, I would say fiber, for example, we can't metabolize most fibers, I believe it's fair to say. So calories from fiber, I mean, it's nonsense. So there's certain foods that, we can't metabolize, we can't absorb the calories, and so it's just kind of meaningless. And all these people in the, I guess, mainstream dietary, what have you, is they die on the hill of calories, and it's really just kind of not reliable. How far off am I?
Not too far off. I mean, at the end of the day, ostensibly what we're dealing with here is the calorie is a measurement unit, excuse me, of a form of a thing we call energy. In this case, it is manifest as heat. What is heat in the sense of a substance, of the molecules of a substance? It's how fast are they rotating, those molecules, if they're able to rotate? How rapidly are they shimmying side to side, thusly, or bending more? Would be better, like a three-part molecule would bend and spring in the middle, sort of thing. Or how fast are molecules going across space in a given direction at a given speed? That's what heat is. The only way to produce heat, to manifest heat, is to combust the substance, react it with oxygen, thus allowing that heat to be released to entropy. In the form, actually, the physical translators of the force, they're actually photons in the infrared range of frequencies. That's how the various substances interact. That's how any physical substance that interacts with any other physical substance, that's what's going on, is that over very, very short distances, the electrons are repelling each other by means of firing electrons willy-nilly backwards and forwards between them. It's fascinating stuff. But at the end of the day, while ever a food substance is sitting whole on a plate, there are no calories there because it's not emitting heat. It's not releasing heat to entropy. That heat energy has not been made manifest. The calorie is a loose estimate at best of actual energetic requirements in human cells, because the way they measure it is by rapidly combusting a thing in a large electrical current, vaporizing it basically instantaneously. It also assumes that the human physiology or metabolism is able to use or to release that energy inherent in every single one of those carbon-hydrogen bonds in the entire substance. Basically what you said, Sean, that, we don't actually digest all of it. Fiber is a great example. We digest basically none of it, actually. So, and yet it's included in the calories because that's what happens when you burn the stuff that's got that much fiber in it. It releases that much energy to the water bath. Oh, look at that. 792 calories or whatever. I just made that number up, obviously, but yeah, so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a really, really loose estimate of the energy actually derived by a person's physiology from the foods that they're eating. And there's a lot of assumptions around interconversions between different energy forms and entropy, enthalpy concerns all the way up and down the tree. It's just crazy stuff.
Yeah, so basically there's tons of variables in that equation, and I would assume everybody's metabolism is different. And
Yep.
also, I believe I've heard you say before, we're mass-based. We run off of mass, not energy.
Yeah. That is true, because what happens in the human body is that to produce the ATP for the so-called energetic requirements of the cell, what we do is we react the food, the carbon skeletons of the food that we've eaten, we react those with oxygen, ostensibly, and we capture some of the free energy thus released and use those to set things to an energetic state ready to release that energy at a later time. An ATP molecule, the energy currency of a cell. We don't run our metabolism by absorbing photons of light being rapidly released by rapidly exploding a bolus of food. It's a much more complex series of reactions. When I said, oh, well, what we do is react the carbon skeletons with oxygen, I'm summarizing about 100 reactions in that one sentence. And this is a very slow trickle-down thing compared to quickly exploding.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's, I don't know. There's way too much variables, in my opinion. So, all right, well, let's move on to cholesterol.
Lovely. My favorite.
Yeah. Give us a rundown of like the various types of cholesterol.
Right. The types of cholesterol, you might want to write this down. It's quite a big list. It goes like this. 1, cholesterol. Full stop.
Oh, okay.
End of list.
No, I mean like
Yeah.
HDL.
That's the thing. You look up cholesterol. Yeah, exactly the point, isn't it? HDL is not cholesterol. It's a carrier. It's a lipoprotein carrier of cholesterol and other lipids like triglycerides and anything that won't dissolve readily in water, actually. That's what these things do, the lipoproteins. So as you were alluding to there, Sean, you've got low-density lipoproteins, intermediate-density lipoproteins, high-density lipoproteins, and any number of other subclassifications that all sorts of people have thrown in there at various times because they felt like it. Largely, the classes of lipoproteins are determined by the particular protein that identifies that particular lipoprotein. It's kind of like a tag and a thing that ties the whole thing together, and there are different lipoproteins. Apolipoprotein, apolipoprotein B, LP(a), etc., etc., etc. And then they start to subclassify all these sort of different carriers and things. Basically, what it boils down to is the human body has an intricate system of transport devices to move various things around the body that can't dissolve in the plasma, the water of the blood, lipids. And these carriers have all evolved over, well, it seems it has to be at least 13.8 billion years, but probably longer than that, it seems. That's for another day. It's very intricate. It's been around a very, very long time. It's very, very good at what it's doing. Every single one of the lipoproteins in your body exists precisely because there is a length of DNA that encodes for that lipoprotein. That little bit of DNA having survived that entire process of genes being eliminated left, right, and center. It's the peak of evolution, this thing. Yeah.
So, if cholesterol and all these lipids and proteins are so important, why cholesterol bad?
All right, the whole cholesterol bad thing.
Yeah.
I thought that
Let's
was
tackle
well
that.
and truly dead in the food. Yeah, absolutely, we can tackle that. Look, there is a small-ish band of ardent warriors still standing on that hill of the lipid hypothesis for heart disease, the folks that want to blame lipoproteins as a causal agent in the heart disease atherosclerosis process. And it's a shrinking camp every year because it's just a ridiculous notion that will not stand up to even the most cursory basic refutation. There is no evidence whatsoever anywhere in the literature that can causally link any of the lipoproteins or any subfraction of the lipoproteins in any way with any negative health outcome by virtue of existing in the bloodstream. And it comes back to, again, why would your DNA encode for a substance in your blood that's going to do you harm?
Exactly. Statins.
Yeah.
They're a scam. Right?
Well, here's what a statin does. It enzymatically interferes in a pathway in your metabolic tree at a certain point. It's designed to target that enzyme, and it downregulates the activity of that particular enzyme and slows it down. It's an enzyme that encodes for a metabolic intermediary, which, if left unchecked, eventually can lead to the production of cholesterol. Some 19 reactions later, I think, on another page entirely of the KEGG pathway online, it's incredibly high upstream of cholesterol that this check is put in there, this thing that downregulates this enzyme that so it blocks out the root structure, if you like, that would lead to cholesterol. Absolutely, it does that. But it also takes out a bunch of other things as well, because it's so high up on the parent taproot structure of the
so
the
the statins are basically just making a big what's the word I'm looking for? A chain reaction of negative reactions.
Yeah, right. So there are a lot of negative side effects associated with statins, and some of those are quite serious, and I think they're underreported.
Yeah,
basically. Personally, my take on the science there, as a very, very highly trained and ex-practicing scientist myself, I can tell you that this is not just an opinion of the layman. This is a scientific opinion on this. What you're actually doing is you're undertaking a contraindicated intervention because there is no reason clinically why you should intervene in a person's cholesterol level in any way, shape, or form in their blood. That's under the control of your genes. Again, those genes knowing what they're doing. And that intervention that you're undertaking not only nets no benefit to the person getting their cholesterol lowered, because that's not a benefit, they actually get the side effects of lowering their cholesterol, which is in and of itself negative. And that's compounded by the side effects of all these other things on the side chains that are related on that tree that have also been knocked down by that same drug that works right up at the top. Hence all the really negative side effects of statins, like muscle cells deciding to give up the ghost and rupture and, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so... generally speaking, what are some of the causes of calcium arterial calcium? You know what I'm trying to say? Calcification.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Right. So calcification in the arterial walls is a sign of advanced atherosclerotic lesioning of the endothelial cells, epithelial cells, whatever you want to call them, of that vascular structure. It is thought that the process is around the body's last-ditch effort to try and protect this tissue. The scar tissue hasn't worked. The extra cholesterol delivery hasn't worked. Everything the body has tried has failed because this person is so inflamed, so damaged. Their disease process is progressing at a rate the body can't repair it. And then it's almost like there's some kind of switch that's flicked there that's not well understood. And then the body starts to basically ossify, turn that particular tissue into bone. Strange. I don't understand that particular one either as to why it is, but it's used as a very clear clinical measure of advanced atherosclerosis in an individual. Normally what they're doing is they're scanning the heart itself, looking for any calcification in the coronary arteries, and then they'll report back to you. They'll give you a score between 0 and 1,000 plus, whatever it is. 0 being you're absolutely clear of any calcified areas. Doesn't mean you're clear of disease, just calcified disease, which is advanced disease. And if your score's 1,000, you're in big trouble, sort of thing, in terms of your cardiovascular health. It's just a marker, like any other marker. It's something that we can measure because we understand that it's associated with the disease process. But why it happens, God knows.
All right. Well, what about soft arterial plaque?
Yeah. So the soft plaque is obviously the plaque before it becomes so advanced as to become calcified.
Okay.
Yeah, they are largely construed of scar tissue, almost entirely, actually. I think 95% by weight and volume of these lesions is actually scar tissue. And there's a small lipid core in there as well, where there are some encapsulated lipids, including some lipoproteins that have become deranged by usually oxidation. And there's some immune reaction going on there, and there's inflammation, and there's the whole disease process that is atherosclerosis. But the body is responding to all of that nastiness by trying to encapsulate the whole thing with scar tissue. And that's what these lesions are. When they become advanced, either before or after they're calcified, so the calcification makes no difference to this, it seems, but these lesions can become unstable and start basically rupturing. Bits of them start coming away and floating into the bloodstream, basically clots, big clots form, and we get a blockage. That's what a heart attack is, and that's what a stroke is when it happens in the brain, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's how the process of atherosclerosis develops. It's an immune dysfunction, if you like.
Okay.
Largely, it is not a lipid-based dysfunction or a metabolic-based dysfunction. That's where people have got this totally wrong. It's immune-based.
Okay. Well, that answers my next question, which was going to be, should carnivores be generally concerned about soft arterial plaque? But that kind of answers that.
Not in general, because if for no other reason, even if you don't believe what I've just said or understand even what I've just said, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you are descended from a line of people stretching back, it seems, about 350,000 years as humans, and about 2.5 million, 3 million before that as very similar but not quite humans, apparently. And we know what those people have been eating. We have the science that can tell us definitely by analysing their bones that we find anywhere around the world at any age, pretty much, It's all the same story. It's all the same answer. What did humans eat? Turns out humans were carnivores. Our entire existence. Not maybe, not possibly, not this is a guess. They actually analysed the bones, the skeletons of all these humans and ancient pre-humans. Same answer as to what they'd been eating. Meat and animal fat, almost entirely. So, if you understand that, then you know that those are the genes selected for. And a diet which is not rich in animal foods would be a one that's largely either not selected for or indeed potentially selected against. Yep. By, for example, the complete loss of our cecum organs that we had when we were herbivores about 5 million years ago. We don't have a cecum anymore. We have a veriform appendix about that big. Not very useful. So we can't ferment things in our gut very well, so we can't actually eat plants very well.
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah. From what YouTube videos I've seen, I think we went up into the ice sheets hunting the mammoths back in the Ice Age. So I mean, that's just more proof, you know.
Yeah, there wasn't too much else to eat. There weren't too many options. Right. So the megafauna were it.
Right. All right. Next question is: does high protein diet cause damage to the kidneys?
There's no evidence I've seen whatsoever that any amount of protein in the diet can cause a disease to occur. Is there some indication that a person with existing disease, however that did come about, should eat less protein if they have kidney disease, for example? Mm-hmm. And sure, yes, those people need to be a bit careful. But no, I have never seen anything in the literature that would suggest to me that protein causes a disease to the liver or to the kidneys or brain or anything else.
Yeah, that was on my list, was can someone suffering from kidney disease / renal failure start a carnivore diet?
They can, but they probably should talk to someone like myself and just nut it through and make sure that all the T's are as they should be crossed and all the I's dotted and stuff.
What is the blood marker that scares doctors when testing for the kidneys? Like, what markers they look at and say, oh, you need to cut down on your protein?
Yeah, okay, so you've got the GFR, which is an overriding sort of gauge of kidney function. It's the glomerular filtration rate, the GFR. And it just says, okay, mechanically the things are working well, they're not working well. They might take some blood parameters like the BUN to creatinine ratio, or indeed look at either of those numbers, the BUN or creatinine levels individually as well for various different diagnoses of various things. BUN, of course, is the blood urea nitrogen, which is an indication of protein turnover in that indication in that person in the last short period of time, leading to that concentration in their blood at the time it was drawn. Yeah. And then creatinine is a breakdown product of tissue. It's a marker of tissue damage, actual injury to tissues, like muscle cells, be those cardiac muscles or be they skeletal muscles. And so they can also point in a certain direction. So that would be the main ones that I think they would be looking at. Unless they suspect a very specific thing, in which case there might be some very specialized tests that would be added in.
Okay. Suggestions for someone who wants to start carnivore, but they don't have a gallbladder?
Again, that's probably something that you should talk to someone like myself about to make sure it's all tickety-boo, because we will need to be careful in that case as well.
Okay.
Especially with fat intakes and et cetera, all of that. It can be done, it can be worked around, yeah. But
just case by case, I am.
Yep.
Dr. Google says the body can't absorb more than 30 grams of protein at a time. Why is that wrong?
Well, whether it's right or wrong, it's hard to trace, because once you let things into the milieu, really, of the blood in a human, and they're fully free to mix with all other things, then you've got inputs and outputs. How are you going to measure anything? The technology that's used to try and trace things is generally a magnetic resonance spectroscopy sort of bit of kit. Pretty technical, million dollar kit stuff. Universities do these kind of studies with that kind of bit of kit. But for most of us, impossible to say this is what a human body can and can't do. Of course, there are always outliers on any value that they'll give you as well, because the value they'll give you is usually a mean value for something. At the end of the day, people's need for protein is what it is. There seems to be a baseline that you shouldn't really go under that seems to work well for people on carnivore diets. So that's the one I suggest that people start at. And then they experiment on themselves in equals one over time on the basis of their blood glucose response. Now, people might say, what? Blood glucose response? We're talking about protein. Well, excess protein, what your body does with it is it transmutes it into sugar. Then that sugar is either oxidized for energy at that point, or if that's not happening and it starts to float around and pull around, then the body goes, rightio, you're not being used. Now we'll transmute you back to fat. And it can be stored that way. So, the body can interchange, is what I'm saying, between all of these different things. So the way to find the answer for you, the balance for you, would be to do that. I would suggest it would be to trace your blood glucose response, and then come and talk to someone like me that can help you do the calculations on all of that, because that's quite complex as well. But at the end of the day, I personally am one example of someone who clearly, patently does seem to be able to absorb vastly more than that small amount of protein at any one given time.
Okay, so...
there can be hours and hours, really, when amino acids are floating around in your blood, not doing anything. You have a capacitance for protein. Your body will absorb it, you'll break it down. The protein that you need will be used for body structure purposes, enzyme purposes, whatever. That which you don't need, sugar, fat, and yeah. People like to overcomplicate everything, don't they? You can't absorb more than 30 grams of protein at one. Who told you that?
Yeah.
Is my usual response. People, I said, who told you that? Where did that come from?
Right. Well, you kind of covered my next question, which was how much protein triggers, well, generally speaking, how much protein would trigger gluconeogenesis, but I think you kind of covered that.
Yeah, I didn't give you a value though. I just said that for most people, what we find is here's where you start. I'll give you the number if you like. It's 1.75 grams of protein per kilogram of ideal body mass.
There we go.
Not actual body mass.
Not actual body mass?
No. So what you would do to get your ideal body mass is you would take your height in meters multiplied by itself, and you would then multiply that number by 22.5, and that would give you your ideal mass in kilograms. Just fun. And then you work off that, and then you go, okay, 1.75 grams per kilo of that, and then you say, okay, how many grams of protein per gram of meat do I get? It's about 0.25. So what you have to do is multiply out your protein in grams need by about 4 to get a weight of meat.
Interesting.
So you eat that much, and you can eat that much meat in one sitting. I've been doing that for years.
I've most likely
Excellent.
been going over what I'm supposed to be eating, but I'll have to come back to this recording and do that formula.
Yeah, and then the rest of your diet basically is you eat the fat that comes along with it and additional fat if you need it to satiety.
There we go.
No measuring, no counting, no other tricks really, except unless if something goes wrong and you need to ask me, then you can absolutely get in contact and we can do a consultancy. But most people don't need it, a consultancy. Most people can just do this. Yeah.
All right. Next question is the glucose that your body makes through gluconeogenesis, is it chemically different from the glucose made from carbs and sugar?
Nope, same stuff.
Really?
I mean, there are different sugars that float around. There's sucrose, fructose, galactose, but blood glucose is blood glucose. It's identical,
All right.
no matter of where it comes from. Yeah, you might have seen Ken Berry quite often posts this kind of meme style thing where he's saying, look at this fructose found in healthy fruit, opposed to this other fructose molecule over here found in high fructose corn syrup, and basically it's two molecules of fructose identical.
Huh. Okay. I had just been generally curious about that. This one might take a minute. Explain the differences in protein absorption of animal versus plant protein.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems that animal protein meat is exceedingly bioavailable, exceedingly easy to digest. It's almost as if that's been the basis of how we've been deriving our nutrition for something like 4.5 million years. Oh, yes, that's right. We did. As such, very absorbable, very bioavailable. It's complete protein. It has, all of the 9 essential amino acids present in the right sort of amounts to make meat, because that's where we're getting it from, is meat. It's just rearranged slightly from beef meat into human meat, pretty much. Not quite so with plant protein. If for no other reason than plant protein isn't complete. You have to combine different groups of plants to get the full complement of all 9 essentials. And before you even talk about the whole area of, well, okay, do these anti-nutrients exist? Do they really prevent you from absorbing these things? What about the toxins? Does that have an effect on someone's overall function, etc., etc.? To which I say, look, there's no good science on any of that stuff. They're all theories, but that's all we've got in nutrition sciences theories. There is no actual, real, good quality discipline science in so-called nutrition science. It's a bit of a have, actually. I know I've spent quite a bit of time in that field of academic endeavor myself, as I sort of alluded to at the start of the program. So I'm not just saying it's rubbish because I feel like it. I've been in there at the coalface as an academic in that field. It's rubbish. Okay? So that's what's going on with nutrition science. I'm not sure that addresses the question. Remind me of the exact question.
The difference between protein absorption with plant versus animal.
Right, yes. Okay, so I guess the way I would summarize all of it is to say, well, look, we don't know. We don't have the science really, but let's just do a little survey using the ichrometer. Let's just scan our eye over the interwebs and find all the carnivore diet promoting people and just do a visual on these folks. Are they fecund? Are they healthy looking? Do they look well? Are they well put together? Are they muscular? Are they strong? Are they masculine? Are they feminine? Are they anything in between? Are they super intelligent shades of the color pink? I don't know. But generally you'll find these people are healthy and look good and all of that. Then cast your eye over some of these so-called vegan doctors that just do a survey and see which of them you would actually sit down across a table from and take advice from on health at all. You'd sit down, you'd eyeball the bloke, and you'd go, you know what, Sam, I think we're done. And you'd stand up again. And you'd turn around and you'd walk out. You literally would, if you had any sense.
Yep, I agree.
So do they look short on protein? Do they look like they're... I don't know. Anyway, so that's just an opinion, but yeah, you do your own survey. Make your own assessment, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to an overweight doctor, so unless I misunderstood you on a recent live stream, you described glucose intolerance as a construct.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
It's tied up with the fact that insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity are both constructs. Why do I say that? Okay, here we go. It's a little bit technical, but it's the best I can do, I think. Could you give me the name of a company that manufactures, markets, sells a meter used anywhere in the medical fraternity or elsewhere to measure someone's insulin resistance?
Yeah, no.
No, they don't exist. What can we measure? Height, weight, oxygen consumption, carbon dioxide production, urinary production, blood glucose, blood insulin levels. To get insulin resistance, we have to combine two of those things that we can actually measure under the construct that the result is going to be pathological. So we're going to start with a informal fallacy of begging the question, assuming that what we are assuming is correct is in fact correct, that this is a negative thing, insulin resistance. And we're going to calculate it on the basis of some other measurements. Well, that's a construct. It has to be constructed.
Okay.
It can't be directly measured. It's not a first principle. The concentration of glucose in your blood is... Here's the problem. What affects how much glucose is in your blood? Well, how much is going in and how much is leaving? Plus the last little bit of what's been happening to tell us what the level is. The same is true of insulin. The insulin in your blood depends on how much is being released into your blood versus how much is exiting because it's being deactivated. Then to go and say insulin resistance, well, how does it measure 4 variables and come out with a single number? 4 independent variables.
Okay. I think I understand you.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, what I'm saying is there are 4 different control levers there that have an effect over the blood glucose, blood insulin, and the interaction between the two of them. To boil all of that down into a single number and say you have a pathology because these are the balance of your numbers, well, that doesn't help.
Okay.
Especially considering that person's so-called insulin resistance is, again, a thing that's under the control of that person's genes. Again, those genes having survived quite a bit of time. And what the cells of that person's body are saying at that stage is, we are full of substrate for energy. We require no further. We do certainly not want extra sugar in the cell, because if you build up the concentration of sugar in a cell, you start damaging it. So the doors are locked from the inside. It's actually a very simple AMP kinase mediated allosteric binding with the GLUT4 transporter that renders it inactive, locks the door, if you like, from the inside of the cell.
Yeah.
And of course, whether or not any given GLUT4 transporter on any given cell is on or off depends on its state. Ergo, any number of cells adjacent to each other in an organ could be in a state, and a different organ could be in a different state, and the whole body. So it's not an on-off thing, but that leads to insulin resistance is actually an activation of that AMP kinase mediated blockade of the GLUT4. It's part of the Randall cycle series of interactions that I've spoken about quite a bit. Positive. It's it's not a pathology, is what I'm saying.
I got you. All right. Well,
yeah. So that's why I like to challenge.
Go ahead.
Plus, it explodes brain. It explodes people's minds. They can't cope with it, and so it's fun for me to lay that one out. People go, and these are people that were going to give me a lesson at the beginning of the discussion. Yeah. Anyway, so.
Yeah, that's like.
You have to have fun, don't you, Sean?
Yeah. Has anybody really came to challenge you? Like that vegan doctor that Chafee debated. I know you extended a challenge to him. I haven't seen very many people accept any of your debate challenges.
Yeah, the only people who are brazen enough, I guess, to actually front up and turn up for an organised, agreed-upon debate/argument style discussion are people either with very, very serious ego problems or people who are actually genuinely very, very stupid and actually just don't understand how stupid they are. Anyone with any level of nous or credibility at all will take one look at me, listen to the way I construct the arguments and put them together, and they run away as fast as they possibly can with all sorts of nastiness in their drawers. And they go, no way am I touching that with a barge pole.
A lot of your debates, I'm just a dumb trucker. Some of the stuff you say go off over my head, but, still very entertaining. I enjoy your content.
Cool. That shows very poor judgment on your part. No, I'm kidding.
What's your take on alcohol consumption on the carnivore diet?
Right. My take on alcohol consumption on the carnivore diet is exactly the same as off the carnivore diet, really. It's the same either way, which is that there is no requirement for alcohol in the human diet. It's not a required nutrient. I know, wash my mouth out with alcohol. It is a toxin. It is problematic at some point in various different ways. There's really nothing recommending the use of alcohol except on rare and or ceremonial occasions, celebrations, that sort of thing. As an ongoing lifestyle factor, I think it's a very, very bad idea to be consuming a lot of alcohol. And that's coming from someone who was in a position for quite a few years of drinking far too much alcohol. So I'm not coming from a position of I've never done that. So I'm just saying, oh, yeah, you alcohol drinking people, you. That's not where I'm coming from at all. Yeah, no, alcohol's not good stuff.
Yeah,
no.
I agree. But I moderate. I'm not gonna lie. I do it.
Yeah, there are two sorts of people, aren't there? There are people who moderate, and there are people who are completely incapable of moderation, in which case those people are abstainers.
Yeah.
In my book.
Yeah.
I mean, your third option, of course, is to continue to indulge in the destructive behavior until such time as it drags you down completely.
Yeah.
That's always an option. I don't recommend that option. I think that's a waste of a life. Why would you do that?
I've been on that path before, but brought myself out. So.
Yep. Well, absolutely.
This one, we were at 50 minutes. Let's try to not spend too much time on this, but what will it take to settle the science, to convince the world that carnivore is the way?
Time. time, numbers, overwhelming reports, ostensibly the same, that while it's not a magic bullet, while it's not the be-all and end-all, while it's not the only thing you need to do to look after your health, it's damned helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big part of it. If you eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet, according to the genes that you were gifted at birth, really.
I mean, like, what studies, what paper would come out, like how, like that process, like what would it take to?
I think that kind of information, right? That kind of information will come out around more so-called prospective cohort studies, which are junk and do not inform us on cause and effect any more for good positive outcomes than so-called negative ones. However, the balance of that stuff being in the favor of carnivores in time will be helpful, because that pseudoscientific claptrap does tend to have effect on the view.
Yeah.
Of, in terms of actual science being able to prove to us that cause and effect, this causes that, we're never going to be able to do those studies. That's the problem.
Why is that?
It's not ethical to look at labs.
I guess that answers that.
Too expensive. Even if you could ethically lock people in labs, it's too expensive to run the studies. Not practically, because again, you want to talk about health outcomes, well, they occur after decades. So you've got to keep that person locked in a lab under control for decades so that you can talk about cause and effect.
Okay.
Because you have to control confounds in a science study. That's why these things just are never going to happen. So the area of so-called nutrition science for humans is not an area of science. It's an area of theology. There's no actual science in it. What we have is prospective cohort studies on one end, which don't talk about cause and effect, not one jot. And we have small-scale, poorly powered, mechanistic things that are taken completely out of context of how they work in the real world, like the relationship between this and that. They're called reductionist studies. It's like saying, because you've seen the cog out of a Datsun 180B, now you could rebuild a Datsun 180B from that cog, having never seen one. No. So what's missing is the science, the stuff in the middle that would actually flesh that out and act as a go-between the mechanistic speculation on one end over here and the total mishmash of prospective cohorts over here. But this is the stuff we can't do. Magic waving, hand waving. Can't do it.
Well,
ethics, finances, practicalities.
Well, damn ethics always get in the way, right?
Yeah. And that's why this discussion will continue forever. There will never be an end to the diet wars.
Right. All right. For the last question. Now, for pastime, I like to peruse, carnivore cringe for the memes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard some rumors about you, calling you a sellout, a shill for this product called Cerule. Cerule. What do you have to say about that?
Yep. What do I have to say about that? What I have to say about that is that I am an independent business owner in the Cerule structure. I have been promoting the Cerule product to my audience now for about 4.5 years, I think. It is a product that directly acts on the bone marrow and causes it to release vastly larger numbers of your own adult stem cells, which are blank cells of your own, which can become brand new cells of whatever kind your body might need. Basically magics. absolute magics is what this stuff is. 15 years of peer-reviewed science behind the stuff. It does exactly what it says it does. My own personal story is quite miraculous as well. My own experience with this product, which actually goes back now something like 14 years. Don't really have time for all of that today, but there is a playlist on my channel called Adult Stem Cell Related Videos, or something very similar to that people can look through. In terms of ignorant commentary like sell out and shill, just couldn't even be bothered to respond to that. Basically, at the end of the day, we all make a living doing whatever it is that we do. How do I make a living? I make a living by making YouTube videos that YouTube pays me a very, very small amount of money to make. Very small. I consult one-on-one with people who want an opinion on aspects of their health, nutrition, physiology, whatever else that I might be expert in and feel able to comment upon. And I get paid commissions by the Cerule company on a monthly basis, on the basis of how many units of Cerule products are sold, because people see my videos and see them promoted there, like an affiliate situation, if you like. Very similar to that. For which I make no apology.
There you go. How dare you?
Other people.
How dare you try to make money off the internet?
I know, it's incredible.
Well,
I mean, if I wasn't making some money doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't be here doing it for your entertainment. So don't bitch that I might shill for a product now and then, or sell out. Basically, it's just ignorant. It's just a really ignorant mindset. At the end of the day, it's a great product that I've researched really, really well over a very, very long period of time. I've been involved with this product and the company that makes it from the beginning, pretty much.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you wouldn't sell a product that you don't believe in. But the link for where you could buy the Cerule product will be in the description. You have a link, I'm sure, on your website. For consulting. I'll put that in the link in the description as well.
Yep. Cool.
Bart, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And y'all remember to eat bacon and keep trucking.
I'm done. I'm fucking done. I am done. Get out!